one of the questions I have is, so I understand obviously this is written from, the perspective of, administrators, teachers, working with students. How would you take this applying with adults? I'm curious if there's like crossover in having some of those, tough conversations. Cause like, I think that, there's sometimes, as administrators, teachers, colleagues, I've had some tough conversations, with, my colleagues in different roles. Any thoughts on that? Any tips that you share in your work?
Yeah, so there's a ton of crossover. And it's so funny that you bring that up because really we've been, going all over talking about this in different places and we're getting a great response. And there's always an administrator in the room who will come up after and say, "This was so great. I want all my staff to have it. But what about the grown-ups? How do I have these conversations with the other
Uh-huh.
educators that I'm supporting, right?" And so we started sharing that work as well. And the what we're finding, the similarities are you have to start with care. You have to start in that place of care. You have to listen well. You have to treat everyone with dignity. And you have to make sure that you're building trust so that when you're going to that person, they're going to listen to you.
Mhm.
And then there's a whole slew of strategies that we use to be really clear, very direct. Similar with kids, we need to be very clear in our expectation. It's not fair to hold an educator to an expectation if we're not clear about it. It's not fair to have a concern about their performance and not be really direct about the concern so they have an opportunity to turn that around. And there just isn't that much difference between how we do that with kids for behavior and
Right.
then how we do with educators to help them get better. And so, yeah, we've had a lot of fun exploring that work. And in my role now, I have a lot more opportunity to practice
Right.
that than I do talking with kids. So it's super fun.
Well, and that's the next book, like
Yeah,
also. So we've
yeah,
been
yeah.
doing a number of workshops on that, like navigating conflict with adults. And our whole thing is like we wrote our book for really busy people, for busy educators. So our style is that it's super practical. Like you can pick it up and go, this is something that I learned today that I'm going to implement tomorrow. Or if you have kids at home, that I'm going to use on my children in an hour. So
Yeah.
And it's one thing to say, like, you need to build trusting relationships. People know that. What we say is you need to do step one, step two, step three. Here's how you do it
Mhm.
so that folks can then go immediately apply.
So, like when you're talking about this, there's one. It's actually funny because I'm very good friends with this gentleman. He's a colleague of mine. We were both teaching high school at the time. He was coaching volleyball, I was coaching basketball, and he was the athletic director. And they had won. They had surprisingly won and ended up going further in the playoffs. So because the seasons overlapped, volleyball is ending, basketball starting. He bumped my time, and it was like, hey, volleyball gets precedent until the season's done because you're just starting the season where we're in playoffs. So I was upset about it because I was like, geez, now I got to change everything I'm doing, like because now. And I remember complaining about him in the staff room. He wasn't there, and I was like, I can't believe he did this, blah blah blah. And so he came up to me. He said, I heard you complaining about me in the staff room. I'm like, I was. And he said, listen, if you have a problem with me, come talk to me. I'm like, you're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He's like, okay.
Yeah.
And it was it. That was it. Like, we're good
Yep.
friends. Like, I remember that. Whereas I've also seen silent treatment among staff. I've seen, passive aggressive stuff.
Yeah.
And I always think about that. And like, I'm outing myself. Like, I was the one who did something wrong here. And I appreciated that he wasn't like, doing stuff. Like, it was conversation. He said what he said. I apologize. That was it. It was over, right? And I was like, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't have done that. I should have came right to you, and we could have got it solved.